Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to have all of you with us this evening. Welcome. We start Satsang with a question that comes to us in advance from our global family that joins us, not in person, but via YouTube or Facebook or different Instagram, different online forms, and they send in questions. And since they can't be with us physically, I always like to honor them with taking the first question that comes from them. And then we open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. I work in hospitality, so service is like my middle name. But there does come a point when people's demands constrain the definition of service. When we speak about service as a spiritual practice, whether we use the word seva or we use the term karma yoga, we're not talking about being a doormat to anyone and everyone's random demands and mood swings and issues. That's not what service means. Now, the person who asked the question began by saying, I work in hospitality. So for this person, it's not just a spiritual aspect, it's actually their job. Now, your job in hospitality might very well demand that you do the yes ma'am, yes sir to whatever anybody demands, depending on what your particular role is. If you're a concierge at a hotel, if you're a waiter or a waitress, or, these professions that really are in the service industry on that level. Yeah, of course, what you're being paid to do is keep people happy. At which point, whatever they demand, obviously your goal, as far as your career, is say yes as much as you can. Make it happen. That's why you've been hired. Nobody's going to hire a concierge whose, motto is "Nahi ji, wo to nahi ho payega. Nahi, wo to bahut mushkil ho jayega. Nahi, wo to acha kaam karo, aap kamre mein baith ke TV dekhte raho." Right? You're not going to hire a concierge who just says that they can't possibly organize anything and you should sit in your room and watch TV all day. So you're being hired to be, a problem solver, a service person. But that's very different from service on a spiritual level. When we dedicate ourselves to be in service, it can take a lot of forms, a lot of ways. But it usually takes the form of saying, okay, God, let my every breath, this is what I was speaking about in the Arati this evening, let my every breath, every moment, every minute, be an offering to you. Meaning, let it not be about my ego. Let it not be about my illusion. Let it not be about how much can I grab and obtain. How much money or name or fame or prestige can I accumulate for myself? Or how much money for doing as little. The prayer is the opposite. The prayer is, oh God, let every minute and every moment of my life be an offering to you. Everything I do, let it be surrendered to you. That doesn't mean that anyone and everyone who wants anything and everything from me has to necessarily be taken, in my view, as the incarnation of God. Yes, at the core, on the soul level, on the highest truth level, we're one, right? Our souls are reflections of that universal soul. We are ultimately one with the Supreme Reality. But that doesn't mean that everybody is aware of that and anchored in that when they're telling you to do all sorts of things or asking all sorts of things from you. One way to think about it on just a purely logistic level is, let's say you've got a sum total of $100 in your bank account. Like, that's all you have. Now you walk down the street and everybody's got their hand out. And being a spiritual person, you're going to just keep giving. And that's beautiful. And then you're going to get to a point where you no longer have any money left. And you no longer will be able to give to anyone. And there won't even be enough money there to help you take the taxi or bus or train that you would need to get to work tomorrow, so you actually could earn some more money. So actually, by acceding to every single request, demand, you've created a situation where you literally have nothing else to give. Where it's beautiful. It's like the giving tree story that, so many of us grew up on. It's a beautiful story. But it's a heart-wrenching story because, of course, at the end, the tree has nothing. Nothing to give the boy or anyone. And so when we talk about giving as a spiritual practice, it doesn't mean that I take any and every request, demand from anyone and everyone as sent from God. That's why we've got an inner voice. That's why we've got what Pujya Swamiji calls our inner GPS. Otherwise, in a walk home from work, a walk home from the grocery store, you could have nothing left to give. So, service doesn't mean that we leave our wisdom at the door. This is why in the Bhagavad Gita, when Bhagwan Krishna speaks about karma yoga, remember he speaks about all of these paths together: bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga. Well, karma yoga is this every action as yoga. But remember, we've also got jnana yoga, we've got wisdom. We've got the power of discrimination to know, for example, this person begging me for my money is just going to use it to get drunk or take drugs. I'm much better off using my money to donate it, for example, to the homeless shelter, where people like this actually can get a bed and a meal, rather than to stick it in the pockets of the homeless person, who very likely isn't going to actually use it to feed themselves. It's just buddhi. It's just the power of intellect, the power of common sense. So when we dedicate to service, remember that ultimately we are in the service of the divine, that the prayer is use me as an instrument on earth, but not an instrument of fulfilling every single person's ego desire. Right? I mean, God's highest goal is not that everyone's ego should be fulfilled. God's highest desire for us is not that everyone's ego should just get, buttered up and everyone's desire should be fulfilled. So it's not about, let me just be an instrument to fulfill everyone's desire, whether it's actually a functional desire or a dysfunctional desire. It's let me be an instrument of love, of peace, of healing, of divine connection, of truth. And sometimes that actually comes with saying no. Sometimes saying no is actually the greatest service you can do. There are times where not getting a desire fulfilled is actually the greatest gift you can give someone. Because the lesson that they learn is so much more powerful than what they would gain from simply having the desires fulfilled. So for your job in hospitality, you better just keep saying yes. But for your spiritual practice, use the power of discrimination. Because you've only got 24 hours in a day. You've only got a certain amount of time, of energy, of financial resources. We can't actually give them everywhere. Which means that we need to use our intellect, our wisdom, and understand where to surrender, where to be of service. Getting our own egos out of the way, our own ignorance out of the way, our own illusion out of the way. Does anyone here have a question? Yes.
Hello. I am Karan Tyagi. I am fourth generation of late Shrimati Yogeshwari Devi, who stayed in this ashram for 60-70 years and passed away 3 years back. And she was the one who got us connected to this ashram. So first of all, I am very happy and excited to be here to have a one-to-one interaction with you. These days, the only source of motivation for us is the motivational videos on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram and social media platforms. So I was listening to one of the videos, and in that the motivational guru said that you should not take your life too seriously. But on the practical grounds, people tell us that if you're not serious about your life, you won't succeed. So I would like to understand the contradiction in these two statements.
Beautiful. So first of all, when you heard the motivational speaker say, don't take your life too seriously, I hope, I assume, that what he or she was referring to is the ego, the story, the drama. We don't want to take that very seriously. Take your psychology lightly. Take your story, your identity, your personality lightly. Take your desires, your attachments, your neuroses. Take them lightly. Right? They're just aspects of the particular role that we are playing in this particular act of our karmic journey. But take this life very seriously. And the reason is, this life has been given to you for you to wake up, for you to experience the divine truth of who you are. The ultimate goal of moksha, freedom, liberation, is that which, if we don't dedicate our lives to, don't think that just by losing the body you're going to get it. It's not the body that keeps you from enlightenment. It's the mind. So take your life very seriously, as in, am I using every minute, every moment as an opportunity to surrender more, to be less stuck with my ego, less stuck with my story, less stuck with my way of identifying, less stuck with my psychic dramas, and more focused on using that minute and moment to actually connect through karma, action, through love and devotion, through wisdom and insight, with the truth of who I am. Because if you don't, you're just going to have to come back and do it all over again. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to take your life seriously. If you don't do it this time, all right, you'll do it next time. But at some point, if ultimately your goal is to attain moksha, at some point you will have to put the mind to it. Take it seriously. So I assume that that's what they meant. Now, as you say, you have others saying, well, if you don't take it seriously, you won't succeed. Which is true. But the question that it begs is, what's our definition of success? Because most people's definition of success is all about the superficial story. I should be the one to have more money, more power, more things. While spiritually, I'm essentially sinking. I mean, it's that metaphoric equivalent, right, of, what do they say, arranging the deck furniture on the Titanic, right, or repainting it, or bedecking it with all sorts of gold and jewels. Well, the thing is sinking. And if we don't actually put our attention on, metaphorically, the boat itself, me, who I am, and all I'm doing is focusing on this superficial success, I'm literally just making sure that the deck furniture looks really nice as the boat of my life sinks. So you've got to ask yourself, what's your definition of success? Is it just having more? Is it just better arranged? My deck furniture is bigger than your deck furniture. I've got more deck furniture than you have. Situation? Or are you able to look at success as something on a much deeper and more permanent level? Which is that awareness. That experiential awareness, that knowing, that connection, that drop merging into the ocean. That's success. There used to live a beautiful, amazing saint right across Ganga from us named Swami Dayanandji Maharaj, who has since left his body. But he used to say, and I hold on to it very dearly, he used to say, the only definition of success that matters is how you respond to the inevitable times that the universe does not act the way you think it should. And I love that, because when the universe does not act the way we want it to, when we are in crisis mode, panic mode, mode of loss, mode of failure, mode of house is burning, you can't at that time suddenly try to teach yourself how to be a spiritual person. You have to have had that in you. Those are moments where our subconscious takes over. We're panicked, we're stressed, we're on sympathetic nervous system fight or flight overload. We are going to react exactly as our subconscious has been programmed to do. Which means the only way to respond in a spiritual way is because you've so completely transformed the very nature of your being that when those things happen, okay, there's a beautiful story that Pujya Swamiji tells of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Ji, whose, ashram used to be right here, that today very tragically is called the Beatles ashram, which just makes me feel so sad for him that he was this amazingly enlightened master who happened to be the guru of the Beatles, and his entire ashram is now called the Beatles ashram. But anyway, aside from that, it's a story of Pujya Swamiji was with him when he was still here, I think it was, and his secretary came in and told Maharishi Ji that one of the people who worked with them, had just stolen some enormous sum of money and had run away. Some huge sum of money they had embezzled and now had disappeared. Now you imagine what the head of an organization who was just told that one of their closest people had just stolen this massive amount of money. And Pujya Swamiji said he was very calm. And he got this sad look in his eye and he said, he must have not been meditating. And I love that story, because you can only respond like that when that's become the nature of who you are. Otherwise, what do? You swear, you curse, you're furious, get the police on them immediately. Long before you've had a chance to think about how you're going to react, you've already cursed them out. You've already yelled, your face is already red. And you think how many successful people could be told something like that and respond in that way. That's the definition of success. Because the universe will always act in ways that are not what we want. And so if we keep allowing ourselves to just get bounced around, like the ball in a pinball machine that, somebody's pulled back and it just goes like this across the walls, and well then, what have we taken birth for? So yeah, you've got to take life seriously or you won't succeed. But you've also got to be really clear about what your definition of success is, lest you end up spending your entire life running after something that you realize didn't matter, and when it's far too late, you realize you've been, arranging the deck furniture on the Titanic. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Shreya Tyagi. I am his wife. We got married 2 months back.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. And today I'm here and I'm feeling that we are following this parampara. We are the 4th generation. I'm really feeling, very happy and delighted. We are here with our father-in-law and my mother-in-law is sitting there. And we are feeling really happy. So my question here is, for our generation, how to attain mental peace, because people say to attain mental peace we need to have a thing called ignorance, but we cannot ignore everything that is around us. People also say ignorance is bliss. So I want to know for us how to attain mental peace.
Beautiful. Ignorance is definitely not bliss. Ignorance might be a numbing sensation, a bit of superficial level enjoyment. मज़ा आता है, उसी तरह की मज़ा, right? But you can't really be in bliss with ignorance. Because otherwise, what's the source of your bliss, right? Where does bliss come from? I mean, you can't order it on Amazon. Where does it come from? So it's either going to come from outside or from inside. If it's going to come from outside, and I'm in a state of ignorance, what are my options, right? Drugs, alcohol, that type of masti, right? Well, that's not bliss. That's called chemical intoxication. And you come down. It's got a half-life, a very short half-life. In a few hours, it's over. Then you're hungover. So that's not really bliss. Things like parties or movies or shopping trips or a good meal, you couldn't actually call them bliss. You might say you enjoyed the food, but you'd have to be living a really shallow life for the most bliss you get to come from just a meal or a movie. Sure, you enjoy it. But if you don't have an inner bliss for something you're experiencing outside to hook into, it's going to be really superficial. Then it's just enjoyment, momentary pleasure. Some reward chemicals going in our brain. It's not bliss. So the peace that you want, it's also not peace. Because the truth really is, at the end of the day, when you lie down to go to sleep, we know a lot more than we let on during the day. We're not quite as stupid as we may look or as we may act in order to convince ourselves that we are happy and everything is great, right? In order to sort of curate our identities on social media. As though this cappuccino with, the flour drawn in the foam that I've taken a picture of and pasted with a selfie really is the highest source of bliss. Well, we know it's not. And in a quiet moment at the end of the day, we know we're not blissful. So ignorance doesn't actually lead to the bliss or the peace. We have to stay very, very busy to keep ourselves from being quiet enough to realize, my God, I'm actually not happy at all, or certainly not deeply happy. And so it's a beautiful question that you ask. You say for our generation, for the younger generation, and it's interesting because you're right, the older generation really did seem much more able to find it. And the reason is, interestingly, they were less drawn by a lot of this external world. There was a lot more emphasis on spirituality, on values. I mean, if you asked your grandparents how many hours in the work week your grandfather worked, it's very unlikely, unless he was, bonded laborer somewhere, the equivalent of sort of a slave somewhere. If he had his own choice in his own work, it's very unlikely he was working 100-hour work weeks. It's very unlikely that by the time he and your grandmother had time to be together at night, it was 10:30. Very unlikely. Very unlikely that someone else was waking their kids up, your parents up, and putting them to sleep at night. Now, change has happened, and we can't rewind the world. Nothing is good or bad, better or worse. With development, with progress, with time, we get changes. Our world is different. And it doesn't serve us in any way to say better, worse, good, bad. We simply say, okay, here we are. But we look at it eyes wide open and we say, wow, that's so interesting. Maybe I actually could implement some of that in my life. So for example, if I worked 50, 60 hours a week at the company, at the office, instead of 100, I'd bring in significantly less money. I'm aware of that. Maybe I wouldn't actually make it to senior vice president. But with all of that extra time that I could spend with family, with friends, doing yoga, meditating, my hobbies in nature, doing volunteer work, seva, engaged in something that makes a difference? Isn't it possible that actually I would find myself much happier on a deep level than I think I will be by whatever this 100-hour work week promises me? At the end of however many years it's going to take me to become the person at the top of the company. Maybe there is some wisdom in what our grandparents and great-grandparents and ancestors taught us. And just to allow the idea to kind of percolate in your mind and really ask yourself. You say, how do we find peace? Well, I would say to you, what are the moments in your life in which you feel peace? Surely you have experienced peace at some point, maybe just for a few moments. What are those moments? Are they moments in department stores shopping? Are they moments at weddings showing off your brand new clothes, knowing that everyone is jealous of you? Or are they moments of something much deeper, something much richer? Ask yourself, the moments in your life that you have felt bliss, what were you doing? Where were you? Chances are the moments are going to be moments that involve deep connection. Deep connection to the divine. Maybe through connection to another human being. Maybe through watching a sunset over the ocean. Maybe through lying on your back and looking at the stars in the night sky. Maybe through helping people, serving, allowing yourself to be used as an instrument in God's hands. Maybe singing kirtan with Pujya Swamiji and the Ganga Arati. But ask yourself, these are questions that, yes, I can guide you, of course, but you actually know the answer. The real key is allowing ourselves to disengage from the machinery of a system that says, oh, you want happiness? You need this much money, this title, this much power, this many followers on social media, this type of house, this type of car, this type of popularity. Just allowing yourself to be disengaged, and you can do it really through a process of Jnana Yoga. Really ask yourself, okay, yeah, it's nice to get a raise, it's nice to make money, but internally just do kind of an inner check-in. How does that feel compared with the joy that you get in doing something different? Ask yourself. And the beautiful thing is you're very young. And so you've really got this opportunity to make a decision. And I'm not saying quit your jobs and, go live in caves in the jungle. But you've got an opportunity to decide, what is your work week going to look like? What is your version of success? How much do you really need? I mean, this is a great question to ask yourself. If you are anyone on a career path in which you believe that path is going to bring you happiness, have a check-in. You know, choose a few times a year, maybe a birthday, maybe the new year, maybe a holiday, but choose 3 or 4 moments a year. And just simply ask yourself, is it enough yet? Is it enough yet? Because every year, presumably, you're going to have more than you had the year before. So just keep asking yourself, is it enough? And yeah, you shake your head, no, it's never enough. It's never enough. And at some point you realize that is so interesting. It's like, I don't know if you've ever tried to quench deep thirst with, some kind of a sugary drink, a Coca-Cola or something. And despite what every single advertisement will tell you, it doesn't actually quench your thirst. It makes you more thirsty. The body is craving water, and when you throw sugar into it, it actually needs more water. When you're really hungry, and instead of having a proper meal, you have a bag of chips or cookies. Like you decided, forget it, I don't have time to make a proper meal, I'll just eat a bag of potato chips. Well, your stomach is full, but you're not satiated. You don't actually feel like, wonderful. Now I'm great. You feel like, oh God, what did I do? You do that enough times and eventually you realize, potato chips are not the answer to when I'm really hungry. It's not actually giving me what my body is wanting. So don't rely on me. Ask yourself, how much is enough? And no one can answer it for you, but you can. And I think what you'll find is some direction there then about what your days will look like, what your weeks will look like, what your years will look like. Once you realize what it is that brings you bliss and peace, well, you go after it. And it's a beautiful time as you start your married life together. Spend some time, sit on the banks of Ganga together. Just, quiet in meditation, just the two of you, and really have these sorts of conversations. How much do we need? What are our priorities? Where is our joy going to come from? What are we looking at? And lastly, I would say, look at what you've seen. Because we've all got not only parents, but we've got our parents' friends. We've got the parents of our friends. There's a lot of people in the generation above us for us to look at and say, who is where I would like to end up? Who's got something that really feels to me like, yeah, that's what life's about. Not who's the one that just everybody thinks, well, buddy aad me hai. But really, who's got something that when you're with them, you feel like, yeah, this person, really. And then see how you can mold your life, or ask that person for some thoughts. That's where mentors come from. We look at people who have something that we think, I would like to have that in my life. How'd you get it? And you learn. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful day to all of our family joining us from all over the world. We hope you'll be able to be with us soon at some point when the divine plan brings you here to the banks of Ganga. And until then, we're so happy to have you with us online. And I look so forward to seeing all of the rest of you tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful night.